A good Erev Shabbos, everyone, as we learn the segment known as For the Shabbos Table. And this shir, its inception was made possible by a grant from the Reuben family, who now is partnering to support this shir. So first of all, we want to wish the Reuben family a mazel tov on the birth of a granddaughter. They ask us to please be maspal, that they should be a healthy ben zachar, and atzlach and ruchnius and gashmius. They are being partnered by a wonderful woman who chooses to be anonymous and is sponsoring the shir that her daughters should find wonderful shidduchim quickly and easily. So, in this week's parsha, it says, "Ish ki yafli lindor neder nazir lahazir laHashem." A man, the Ibn Ezra translates yafli as a man who does wondrously, from the lashon of pella, to issue a vow to be a nazir to Hashem, to abstain from wine, amongst other things. So again, the Ibn Ezra, who's one of our Rishonim, says that it's a pella because the Raiva Olam Hoichum Achar Taivaisav, most people follow their desires, and the Nazir is Hifrish Atzmai Miyayin, he separates himself from wine. He abstains from something very desirable. Yad Lachim, who works a lot with Balei Tshuva, tells a wondrous story. There was a young lady who came from a totally non-observant background, and slowly but surely she became more and more observant. But her parents didn't like the transformation of their daughter, and they gave her a tough time. Finally, she was holding by the madrega to trade in her short skirts and her shorts for tznius clothing. And her mother rebelled against this vociferously. And she said, "As long as I live, I'll never let you dress like one of them. That'll never happen." And she wouldn't let her buy modest clothing. So finally she went to the madrega of this young lady. She went to the Yad La'achim office, and she said that she's ready to take a knife and make cuts on her thighs, so she'll have to wear bandages, and her mother she won't be able to even wear tight pants because it'll chafe at the wounds. Her mother will have to accede to her wearing a long skirt. I don't know the end of the story, if they prevailed upon the mother. But Reb Zilberstein said that we find, at first we would look at this aghast. The Torah doesn't let a person mutilate their body. But actually, the Ran in Nedarim tells us that we know that Rabbi Yosef, the great Rabbi Yosef, was Saginar, was not able to see. The Ran says that Rabbi Yosef didn't want to look out of his Daled Amos, didn't want to look out of his 4 cubits. So he says, "Suru acharei levavchem acharei einechem," and he had difficulty. So he gouged out his eyes. Unbelievable. And we know at the time of Nigolas Bavel, when we were exiled And Yirmiyah was Mekainen. Yirmiyah said the famous lament that many people say before benching during the week. Al Naris Bavel, by the rivers of Bavel. It says that there were Leviim that cut off the tips of their fingers because they didn't want that Nebuchadnezzar should force them. They knew how to play the harp. They knew how to play the lyre in wondrous ways, like they did in the Beis Hamikdash. And they didn't want Nebuchadnezzar to force them to play to idolatry. So they mutilated their fingers so that they shouldn't be forced for idolatry. So we see what people did to their own body is not to sin. Ish ki yafli lindor neder nazir la'Hashem. We'll talk about the motivation to become a nazir. So there's a famous Gemara in the Dharm. The Gemara in the Dharm tells us that Shimon HaTzadik Amar, the great righteous Shimon HaTzadik said, Miyamai lo yachalti oshim nazir tameh. I never ate the guilt offering of a nazir that became inadvertently tameh. When he becomes tameh, he loses all his days. A regular nazir is 30 days. If he becomes tameh, he loses all the days that he counted. He has to bring a guilt offering. So Shimon HaTzadik said, I never ate from the oshim of a nazir, elapam achas. You want to know the real, sincere naziris? The Gemara tells us the story of this model nazir in the eyes of Shimon HaTzadik. Ba adam echad nazir min adarm. A nazir with obviously long hair came from the south. Uri Isiv, and I saw Sheyufei Einayim, he had beautiful eyes, V'toiv roi, and he was very handsome. Uketzaisav Sedurim Leital Talim, and his hairs grew in beautiful tresses. Amartilai, I said to him, a nazir has to cut off his hair. Amartilai Banai, my child, Mara Isa Lahashkis Esare Chana. What generated you to become a nazir? You'd have to shave off your beautiful hair. So Amali, he reported to me, Raya Hayisi La'aba Biri. I was a shepherd for my father in our town. Now you have to know, they didn't have mirrors in those days. He didn't know how he looked. Halachti l'ma'alois mayim min ha'ma'ayin. I went to fill water from the well, and all of a sudden I saw my reflection. V'nistakalta bivoa sheli, and I saw my image. Upachaz alay yitzri, and my passion got the better of me. Ubikesh l'tardeni min ha'olam, and wanted to drive me out of the world. Amartilai, I said to my Yetzer, men of distinction, talk to the conscious. Lama atam why are you haughty ba'olam she'ena shelcha, in a world that's not yours? B'mishu asid liyais rima v'soleya, with a body that's going to end up being maggots and worms. Right? Ha'avoda shal galchecha l'shem shemayim. By the temple service, I will shave off the hair for the sake of heaven. Miyad amarti in the shaktiv al roishay. I got up, I kissed him on his head, amarti le, and I said to him, Banai, kamaycha yirbu nazir naziyas b'Yisrael. May there be more nazirs in Yisrael like you. So I have to tell you that I always learned this Gemara, that when he saw his reflection, he was tempted to become a playboy. And he wanted to, go get women. That's the way I always learned it, especially when it says Russia and Stama Verin Shas is promiscuity. However, that's not the way the great Stipler guy learns the Gemara. It's very, very instructive. I never knew this. Many times I taught Shas, and I taught this Gemara that it was referring to that he saw his reflection and he wanted to become a Don Juan. But that's not the way the Stipler guy learns in the Birchas Peretz. He says that the Gemara doesn't say what his Yetzer Hara was. He says, but the man himself gives a clue. When he says, Lama ata mizga, why are you being arrogant? So it says he was Megala Dagosai, Maloshin Mizga. What he was worried about is he became arrogant, he became proud. And he says, Bikesh l'tardeni min ha'olam, because pride, it says, Toyav as Hashem kol gevalev. An abomination of the Lord is when you're haughty. So he says, he says, Russia, you want to be so proud? Look at me, look how handsome I am. I'm going to cut off the hair. And it's interesting that in the Birchas Peretz, the Stipler goes on to say, look how opposite a person is from the way we're supposed to think. He says it's normal for someone, if they come over to him and they praise his accomplishments, that a person should feel great. I'm a something. When really he's by the cliff, and it's a danger that he might become arrogant. It's it's a warning how we have to be very careful of pride. You know that one of the things that amaitzian as adam in ha'olam, one of the things that eject the person from the world early, is covered. Ki yafli lindar neder nazir laHashem miyayin v'shecher yazer chaymitz yayin v'shecher al yishta. So the Noam Elimelech, the great Noam Elimelech, in a Chassidish form, explains the pasuk as follows: Miyayin v'shecher yazer. You could crown yourself with wine and strong beverage by drinking it l'kvod Shabbos, l'kvod Yom Tov, for Sudas Mitzvah. But chaymetz yayin v'shecher al yishta. But the vinegar of wine, in other words, to drink it just for lust, just for personal pleasure, you shouldn't do. I have to tell you a story from the Minchas Elazar. The Minchas Elazar, the Frierdiker Munkacher Rebbe, was a legend. He was a legend, and it's amazing that I didn't realize that he only lived, lo yaleinu, he only lived 66 years. He was born 1871 and he passed away pre-war 1937. But he left such a legacy, such a body of Torah in the Shalos Teshuvos, Minchas Elazar. He was a legend. He was an example. He communicated with other Rebbes, with the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, with the Belzer Rebbe. He was already an amazing person at the age of 9. He was already an amazing person. Anyway, the Minchas Elazar was traveling in a train, and sitting opposite him was a man eating a ham sandwich. And he saw the man eating a ham sandwich, and he said to him, Yehudi, asa lach lechel chazer. Jew, it's forbidden for you to eat pig. So the man looked up, he says, I'm not a Jew. So again, here's a man not wearing a yarmulke eating a ham sandwich. Again, the Minchas Elazar tells him, Yehudi, Asalach lechel chazer. So again, the man insisted, I don't know why you're calling me Yehudi, I'm a Gentile. Third time, the Minchas Elazar says to him, Yehudi, asalach lechel chazer. The third time, the man opened the window of the train and threw out the remainder of the sandwich and looked at the great Rebbe and started crying. I am a Jew. Because of all the anti-Semitism, everything, I gave up on being a Jew. But how did the Rebbe know? So the Rebbe told him that there's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Kuf Ayin, that when you eat, you don't bite and put the rest down on the table. Because it's not nice for the guest to see the food that you bit. So the minhag in Poland is that when you eat a sandwich, you take a knife and you cut a piece and you eat that piece. Then you cut another piece and eat that piece. Nobody else does that. That's the way they did it with an apple too. You cut one piece of the apple, you cut another. That's it. All the Jews did in Poland because of this halacha. He said, no goyim do that. You're eating that way. So I knew you saw that in your home. He said, you're right. My parents were Haredi, were religious, and this is the way we ate in home. And that remained with me. He was so moved by this that he became attached to the Rebbe and he came back to Yiddishkeit. Rav Blau read this story of the Minchas Elazar and he used it after the Shaya when he was allowed to go into the monastery and recover Jewish children. And he said, I want to see how they eat. And the ones that cut the food with a knife, he said, these are Jews. He says, every single one he was right about. Now, well, it's an amazing story. And it's interesting that there are other halachas. You know, my Rebbitzin tells me, Moshe Meir, you have to be careful when you eat that food shouldn't get on your beard. People don't want to see while you're eating food on your beard. It's actually an El Yerabba. El Yerabba is one of the great poskim. El Yerabba writes that you should be careful when you eat that the food shouldn't get on the beard. It doesn't look nice to people. The Shemei Amunim Rebbe writes that tzaddikim didn't bend down to the food and eat. They brought their food to them. They didn't want to bend down to food. They're not animals. It's interesting. It's interesting. Hanogus of Yidden when it came to food. But there's something else over here that's very important. You see that the way he was taught as a child stayed with him. So when Rav Zilberstein said over this story in a shul on Chol Hamoed, there was a lawyer in the shul, and he asked permission to say something that pertained to what the Rav was saying. They gave him permission. It was a big lawyer. He says, I want you to know that an amazing case came my way. And I had an opportunity to be hired for a very important case which would command a tremendous amount of money. And they wanted me to sign on Chol Hamoed. And he said I didn't do it. Although I could have had heterim, all kinds of heterim. So I want to tell you why I didn't do it. I grew up in a poor house. My father was a carpenter. He got a job on Chol Hamoed. Now, one of the heterim to do work on a cholamoid is poyel she'ein lo ma ye'achal, a worker that doesn't have what to eat. We were very poor, and my father said, I could work. But my mother said to him, you know, it's an opportunity to show that we love Hashem, we love His Yom Tov, and we trust He'll take care of us. I remember that discussion with my parents, and my father said, okay, I won't do it. And it stayed by me, and I didn't sign. I told him, even if I lose the job, I'm not signing until after Cholamoid. That's the power. It's an amazing power. That's the power of what we learn in our youth. V'nika ish me'avain. It says that the only time the waters test is only if the husband is innocent. If the husband himself is a playboy, then the waters won't test his wife. The Barki Nafshi uses this, sometimes he has stories with loose association. V'nika ish me'avan means that the man will be cleansed from sin. He tells a story. I found this story so remarkable. It's like a remarkable story. The Chavetz Chaim's oldest son-in-law was Rabbi Aaron HaKoyin. And one time he was in the running for a prestigious rabbinate, to be a Rav of a prestigious city, and he didn't make it. Someone else was chosen. And he was extremely down about it. He was extremely depressed about it. So the Chavetz Chaim told him, don't feel bad. The Rabbanis is not something, don't feel bad. But he saw that it didn't help. So he said, I'm going to reveal you something, but you can't reveal it while I'm alive. Chavetz Chaim, for a short time, was the Rav of Radin. He gave up the Rabbanis rather quickly. But for a short time, he was the Rav of Radin. He said, what happened that he gave up the rabbit in Radin? He said there was an incident where there was a butcher that was caught selling treifas. He was caught selling things that weren't kosher. Okay. Immediately, the Chavetz Chaim removed him from his post. You can't be trusted. You cause people to eat tarfus. It's a terrible crime. It caused their hearts to be polluted. He removed him from his post. Shortly afterwards, the man came to him very contrite, very sincere, said, I made a mistake. This is what I know. Please give me another chance. So Chavetz Chaim was convinced that he was sincere, and together with the fact that he had a large family to support, the Chavetz Chaim agreed that he should get another chance. But he gave him a big penalty to give a large amount of money to the shul. Okay. A short while afterwards, the butcher died. One day, the Chavetz Chaim fell into a sleep. And he relates that 3 very distinguished people came to him. And they asked him, Yisrael Meir, that's his name, Yisrael Meir, when you gave the knas, the penalty to this butcher, did you do it so that he shouldn't sin again and that other people should learn not to do it? Or did you also give it to him that it should atone for his sin? So Chavetz Chaim got very frightened. They told him, relax. So he thought, And he said, I gave it as a punishment. I never thought that it should be an atonement. So they thanked him. He woke up. He was very distraught about the dream. He fell into another sleep. And the butcher came to him and said, do you know what you did to me? I claimed that I already got atonement. You told them it wasn't an atonement. Now I'm going to have to go to Gehenna. When the Chavetz Chaim saw what was involved in being a Rav, he said, Rabbanos is not for me. He stepped down from the Rabbanos. You know, Rabbi Wein, he once wrote a get. Now in a get, if you mess up a get, and then the woman is really not divorced and she remarries, so then her children from the second husband are mamzerim. So Rabbi Wein, he wrote a get, and he was so nervous the whole time that he told his Rebbe, the great Rabbi Kreisworth, I'm never going to do this again. I mamish couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. So Rabbi Kreisworth said to him, so who should do it? People that can sleep and people that can't eat? Who should do it? It should be the ones that are very scared. But anyway, the pasuk says, "Ad melois hayamim," until the completion of days. You know, there's an amazing Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim says that, you know that by the Yam Suf, it says, Vayar Yisrael es hayoda gedoyla asher osa Hashem b'Mitzrayim, Vayiru ha'am es Hashem, Vayaminu b'Hashem u'v'Moshe avda. That phrase, Vayar Yisrael es hayoda gedoyla asher osa Hashem b'Mitzrayim, the long hand that Hashem did to the Egyptians. It's a very unusual phrase, the long hand. Now you could say that 9 million Egyptians drowned in the sea. There was a very rather long hand. The Friedrich Iskalya Rebbe says a beautiful pshat, that the Yad HaGedolah is Bisya's hand. Remember when Bisya stretched out her hand to retrieve Moshe Rabbeinu? It says Moshe Rabbeinu's ark already floated out 400 cubits. So Nishtar v'va'ama, her hand stretched out and telescoped to 400 amas. So Vayar Yisrael es hayod hagdola asher asa Hashem b'Mitzrayim, that miraculous hand that Hashem did in Egypt. Vayaminu b'Hashem Moshe avdei, they knew that Moshe was his servant. It's a nice pshat. Chavetz Chaim says a different pshat. It's such a fundamental pshat. It's from the Gadol Adar. Such a fundamental pshat. 117 years the Jews suffered in slavery in Egypt. So it says 117 years. 86 years intense avodas perach. They didn't see the Yeshua until they were in the Yam Suf, and they saw every Egyptian getting their desserts. Those that were very wicked, it took them a very long time to drown. They bobbed up and down. Each one got what they deserved. Vayar Yisrael es hayod hagdolah was a very long hand. Took a very long time to see the einish. Sometimes it takes a long time. So, I'll tell you an example of this. Rav Shread, we all know the great Rav Shread, the Maggid, Shalom Shavadron, had the schiyah to hear him. He's an amazing Maggid. Rav Shalom Shavadron, and together with him, another great Talmid Chacham, Rabbi Ezra Barzel, they learned in Lomzha in Petach Tikva. They wanted to go to the yeshiva in Chevron, the city of the Avos, by the Alto von Sabatka. They were top-notch Talmidim. They went for a bechina, and they thought they did very good in the bechina, but they were turned down. Now, most people turned down, they would get a little rebellious. But they accepted it. They didn't know that the Reshiva of Lomzha, of Kat, sent it out to Sabatka that it wasn't good for the yeshiva that these two Bachrim should leave at that time. And he said they shouldn't be accepted. Turned out that year was the Hebron massacre, where many, many, many young men got massacred by the Arabs, and their lives were seen. Afterwards, they saw as a Yada Gdaila. Took time to see. Another example of this is Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. It's in Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky's biography, also about Rabbanos. When he was in Europe, he was a candidate for a prestigious Rabbanos in Tzitavyan. Now, his family didn't have Parnasa, and they desperately wanted the Rabbanos in Tzitavyan. And he got passed over. They took somebody else, even though he was known as an Ilui. He got passed over. And he says he remembers that when he got passed over, it was Tisha B'Av in Shtib. It was like Tisha B'Av. It was sorrow, like it was Tisha B'Av in his house. Little did he know that the whole town of Tzitavyan would be massacred together with the Rav by the Nazis. He didn't get the job, so he emigrated to America. He was a Rav in Toronto, and they brought in his wife and children, and they were all saved. But you don't see that right away. It's a Yada Gdaila. It's a long hand. I had that myself. Towards the end of my Rabbanos in Staten Island, my shul was not doing very good financially, and after being there already 37 years, they told me that they really can't pay me. And to me, it was like, what? It was only later that I saw that Hashem was orchestrating that I should come here to be able to lead a beautiful kehillah over here. But it's a Yada Gdaila. You don't see things right away. I want to share with you one more thing. Although it's already 33 minutes, it's longer than usual. I want to thank again our partners, the Rubin family, and our anonymous partner, that her children should be blessed with good shidduchim, 2 daughters. The Rubin family should have a ben zachar. Also, if you want to sponsor next week's Chumash Shir, the main Chumash Shir, 718-916-3100. Took us very long till the morning, Wednesday morning, to get a sponsor. It's $360. Probably 1,000 people listen to the shir. It's a bargain. 718-916-3100. You could text me or email to rmmwsi, Rabbi Moshe Weiss, Staten Island, at AOL.com. We talked about in the main shir about the bracha levarich Amar Yisrael ba'ahava, that the Kohanim are charged to bless Amar Yisrael with love. The Kav Chaim says, it says ba'ahava to emphasize that the Kohanim have to have love. It says if a Kohen hates somebody in the crowd, the Zohar says it's a danger to him. And Zohar relates of one who died by the duchen because he hated somebody in the crowd. So the Sas B'Imrosecha relates that there was somebody that told Rav Braverman, a non-religious Jew, that he's struggling very mightily with Parnasa. So Rav Braverman gave him the Eitzah to come to Duchening. Remember, in Eretz Yisrael they Duchen every day. He says, when it says Yivarechecha Hashem, I told you this from Rav Steinman, Yivarechecha Hashem, Rashi says B'mammon, so come. So he said, it's very hard for me to stay in shul a long time. It's hard for me to put on tefillin. Tell me when they say Duchen, and I'll come for that. So they told him. He stood outside, and when they came to Duchen, he came in. And he saw a very old man, go up on the platform, and it took him a long time to get there with his walker, and he went up the steps. It was very hard. So afterwards he said to the old man, why do you continue to do it? You did your duty all these years, you could retire. There's other Kohanim. So he said to him, the Zohar says you can't hate somebody. In this shul, there are two people that ripped me off in business. And every time I duchen, I have to work on my thoughts and make sure that I love them. And I work on that. And I become a better person. I can't give that up. The man was amazed. You mean you could bless people that messed you up? He says, I got to be part of this. He started coming more to shul, started coming to the Daf Yomi. He became from. That's the avodah of the Kahanim by the Duchen. I want to thank you all for joining us and wish you a good Shabbos.